Good afternoon, folks. We are live and up and running once again. So let me get everything switched over to the right layout, and we will jump into today's drawing stream. Alrighty. You should have audio and video. I think we're good to go. It has been a minute since the last drawing stream, and just streams in general. The schedule's been kind of stupid lately. But this should be hopefully a productive work session today to ideally come up with some more ideas and make some progress on the Deity project. I understand that the last few drawing streams have focused on this one specifically, but I did want to return to this one because I actually have not had any time to work on it outside of the streams. So this will be kind of like a chance for me to force myself to work on it some more and keep things moving, because we're getting already into March now, and I need to make some progress on this one because October will be here before I know it, and I still have a lot of work to do on the music side. So if I can get some of the art concept stuff down, then I think that would be good, so I don't have to worry about it at the last minute. So we are going to resume our work on sketching the overall Deity designs. And the last one we did, I believe, was Time. And that leaves Rebirth, which is one I wanted to kind of rework from our original concept design. We've got Judgment, which is technically not been sketched out yet, but I think I'm going to try and work on that one today, since we have a good kind of framework and idea for what that one's going to be. And then maybe we'll see if we can get to either Chaos or Dreams. What we'll do is we will start here, and I'll label the sketch like we've done before so I don't forget where I'm at. This one. Judgment. And let me see if I can get a reference. We're going to use the album art from the Blood Moon Rites remix project, since this is the avian deity, the one who's probably the most defined out of all of the deities so far. So let me just grab this. I'm going to put it on its own layer so I can use it as a reference. Oh, that'll work. Okay, so just like we've done for the previous concept sketches, we're going to want to start with trying to map out what this thing's body is going to look like. And fortunately, we have kind of a rough idea based on the design here that went with the album art. So we have kind of a long, almost serpentine neck. Let's start with just a kind of neutral standing pose. And I'm doing this kind of at a larger scale than I need to. Maybe we can shrink it down. We just want roughly a shape and then work on an actual concept sketch pose for the whole thing. But first want to map out the proportions. It doesn't need to be this big. And the tail, kind of this long, cut off right about here. We have kind of a long, winding tail. That ends kind of in these sharper feathers like that. If we take the standing neutral pose, and the idea here is just to, again, map out simple details. This wouldn't be an actual pose for the sketch itself, but if we had the wings folded, like so. kind of worked backwards. Normally I start on the head and face, but it's not that important for just sketching out the primary. I think the beak might actually be too short. And as far as the details on the wings go, these things here are on the outside edge of the wing. So if things are folded, they would need to be somewhere along here. Stay on the right layer. Okay, this is a pretty good start, but now I'm going to kind of rough in the texture of the feathers. I might just end up using this one. Since we need the basic idea, we don't need to have a dynamic pose just to show the basic concept of the creature. We can do is define the details on the face a little bit better. The shape of where the beak goes. Okay, these would be horns up here, kind of sticking out from the sides of the head. coming from the skull underneath all of the feathers. Hey, first time chat from Debu but depressed? Is that how you say your name? Hello there. Welcome to the drawing stream. And thanks for the kind words. We're just doing some simple sketching for deity concepts for one of my future projects. So welcome. Just Debu's fine. Well, welcome to the stream, Debu. I'll kind of explain a little bit since I've been working on this off and on, and I wanted to be productive today, so we're returning to the project so I can hopefully get some more things done. So let me back up a little bit and explain what it's for, just so there's a bit of context for what I'm actively sketching here. Let me save my work. Okay, so what we're doing is we're sketching deity concepts, gods, goddesses, etc., because one of my future projects is going to need some of these concepts together so that I can get some actual art done for it. And the project itself, I'm gonna try not to make this too long and boring of an explanation, but it is following this chart here. The project itself is going to be a music release. Just to give you a little bit of background on what I do, what I'm about. We do a lot of different content here on Twitch. We do some gaming stuff. We do art stuff like this. But I also do music stuff every once in a while. And one of the things that I do for music is I create royalty-free background music for content creators. So things that people can use and stream and put in YouTube videos and whatnot for their content free of charge. That's one thing that I develop on and off stream, and every so often I'll release something. This project is supposed to be for next Halloween, and I'm starting now because it's kind of a big project. I've been working on it off and on the last couple months, but basically the rough story of the music collection is all based on this idea of a world inhabited by these 10, make sure I count them right, 10 deities. And so I need concept designs for all the deities because they're going to have their own themes and whatnot as part of the release. If you're interested in seeing what I've done in the past, my music is on Spotify and it's also on YouTube. And so on stream, we've been kind of collectively talking about ideas that go into the development of these different deities. And what you see here, my handwriting is very bad, I'm sorry. But 10 deities with the ideas of concepts, creation, fate, rebirth, knowledge, desire, judgment, time, dreams, destruction, and chaos. This is a pattern to show kind of like a wheel of the different ones, so we have it all captured in one spot. The check mark means I've done a sketch for that already, so we've done most of them, but I've got some things I want to kind of work on today that I'll talk to if we get there. But if we go, what's a good one? Maybe the one we did on the last stream. This one down here. Pretty sure we did this one on stream. And again, these are rough sketch concepts that I can kind of build them out later when I want to actually turn them into art for the music project itself. But this is the god of time. And so we kind of sketched this one out before. the idea of this sort of otherworldly looking creature that governs all the concepts of time. Very simple sketch. I'm not a super professional artist, but the idea is to get ideas together to have a rough concept so that I can develop it in the future, whether I'm going to do it myself, which I don't know if I'm going to do, but more likely if I work with another artist, we'll have ideas together that would be a good jump off point for creating said concepts. Debu says, I like the design. Oh, thanks. Again, it's very rough, but the idea of, again, time. Let's see where else. I'll just run through a couple of them real quick. This is primary. This one is destruction. Kind of a war goddess theme. The mask kind of reminiscent of like Japanese Oni type designs, and for like destruction specifically, we have all these weapons. I like the idea of it not necessarily being like a god of war or goddess of war in this case, but war, conflict, destruction, all part of the overall concept. Which means whoever does this has to draw a lot of swords and weapons. Well, so we'll do one more. Desire. I'm not revealing names of any of these characters, just because that'll be part of the actual project launch. There, I'll zoom in a bit. Desire, kind of the idea, lumping in greed, material desire, immaterial lust, a lot of those concepts all kind of rolled up into one idea of something that represents just wanting things or somethings in general. Hence, we incorporated a lot of specific design elements like mouths, more mouths than you would normally expect on something. Here, on the armor for the shoulders, etc. So kind of an idea of decadence. But that's kind of the exercise. And so this one that I was sketching when you jumped on, this is Judgment. And this one actually has a reference because this particular, this little snippet I pasted in here for reference is album art from last Halloween's project. And I won't go into the lore unless you're curious, but one of the characters featured in that quote-unquote story was the goddess of judgment. And so this is the only one that had kind of a pre-existing design that's part of the overall project. So we have a reference. Debu says I should work on making new OCs, but I'm kind of lazy. That's understandable. I wish I had more time to work on a lot of these things. A lot of ideas, but not a lot of time. Hey, Lava's here. What's up, Lava? Welcome to the stream. Get that hydrate. So we did 6. Let's be consistent. 6 of these things. I'm on the wrong layer. Six on the wing and 4 on the tail. Okay, well, what I'm going to do is go through here and just sort of clean it up a little bit. And maybe what we can do is kind of the reverse of the exercise normally, where I start with kind of a more action or dynamic pose and sketch everything out after doing like the simple primary. Kind of did it backwards this time. So maybe you could think about an actual pose that I would use for fully rendered piece. And we just do with primary shapes rather than resketch the whole thing all over again. I think the color scheme would follow pretty closely what you see in the reference album art here. One of the themes, if you want to call it a theme, that went with that particular project was this whole idea of like crimson wings is a reference that came up a couple times in the tracks on Blood Moon Rites. So the color scheme of this particular deity, we primarily like a dark red, and I kind of like the idea of different parts of the feathers of the body having kind of a color contrast. So it might be hard to see here, but having red feathers and maybe accents of like a darker purple kind of make it pop against the yellow bits that are here. And then maybe like a darker, kind of more shell-like texture for the legs, like from here down. Okay, I think that's a good start. Let's just move you over to the side, give us some room. Okay, like I mentioned, let's see. I want to come up with a couple ideas for how we would render this in like an action pose. So one I thought about would be kind of like a rising up into the air, like mid-flight. So we're going to do this at a smaller scale, but kind of follow the proportions and rough in all the details just so we can figure out what it would look like if it was being rendered. I think the legs are too high up on the body. Hide this. Give me some more room. Okay, hopefully this is kind of clear what I'm trying to do here. The idea would be like the wings. Be outstretched like this. Okay, we don't need to get all the way into the details. But it'd be something like this, where we could see more of kind of the mid-flight type of pose. We wouldn't be able to see. I don't know what these aren't eyes. They're more like crystal accents on the body and the tail. You wouldn't be able to see those in this particular render because they're on the opposite side, the outsides of the wings. But I think it'd be an interesting effect. I am not good at drawing avian creatures with feathers, but having the layers going from the wings of the different feathers and the different colors, I think would be a cool effect. So let's shrink this down. This is an additional reference. Didn't do this on the other ones, but since this one has a bit more of an established idea behind it, then will just be another reference for something like the pose. Now, last thing we'll do, we've done on all the other ones, is just do like a real more detailed close-up on the face. Basically taking what we see here and giving it a little more definition. horns. We'll sketch it out to about here. This is the start of the plumage on the chest part. Clean up the section a bit. I think I want the horns to be a little bit taller. Okay, I think that will about do it. I'm trying to kind of convey the idea that the beak itself is very kind of rough and not metallic, but more kind of rigid, as opposed to all of the feathers, which should have, you know, a natural and a softer texture. Okay, let's zoom out. I'll need to send these sketches to Bits at some point. He would probably get a kick out of seeing some more developed art, since he was technically involved in the original version of Blood Moon Rites. Now we can check off Judgment. Now, one that I've been really wrestling with conceptually, try and figure out. It'll be a good challenge, and maybe if folks in the chat have other ideas, feel free to throw them out. But let's look at dreams. This is the god of dreams. A couple things that I was kicking around as far as a place to start. Might seem a little bit cliche, but I think if we think about some interesting ways to sort of take a common idea and come up with some new twists, then might get some good results. But the idea of eyes. Actually, let's see. We're going to think about some things from the whole concept of biblically accurate angels, which is not really something I've done a lot of for this project because we're not really doing kind of celestial, angelic type designs, but we have in the past. So let's kind of explore that concept a little bit. Okay, starting with a circular shape, and as I start adding stuff in, hopefully it'll sort of gel as far as this idea I'm starting with. These deities aren't designed to be humanoid. A good portion of the ones we've done so far do have kind of a humanoid-ish shape, but I've been kind of toying with the idea of them having separate kind of mortal resembling forms, but that's kind of a more of a stretch goal for the project. I want to get all the main concepts first. Hey, Phoenix Wolf is here. What's up, Phoenix Wolf? Been a while. Good to see ya. Phoenix Wolf says, since when has Raku done art? I thought he was a music man. I do art every once in a while, but it's kind of off and on. Specifically when I have projects coming up, I'll usually try and use stream time to work on things and also bounce ideas off of the chat. And so you'll see me doing concept sketching a lot, and sometimes we'll do pixel art. It's been a while. But yes, we primarily do music, but every once in a while, arting will ensue. Okay, let's clear out some of the lines here. But yes, we are sketching deity concept designs for this year's Halloween project. And the one we're doing, I forgot to title this one so people know what I'm sketching. This one is the god of dreams. Okay, let me kind of explain this idea that I've got here. So I don't know what I'm gonna do with this. I'm just kind of sketching out ideas and seeing where things go. But eyes, teeth, whether this is kind of like a central part of a body or a section of a larger part of the piece. I want to start here with this weird sort of triple mouth thing. I don't know if this has an official term. And yeah, Phoenix Wolf, I didn't think anyone was going to get this sort of reference here. This is definitely taking some ideas from the Langoliers. So good eye. That is definitely a pull. Yeah, it is a good one. Valky from Perfect Strangers was in that movie. Hey, first time chat from Diana01001. Hey, what's up, Diana? I recognize you. Welcome to the drawing stream. Hope you're doing well. Let's shrink this down. Give us more space. Oh boy. That is definitely a bot. Get out of here, bot. This is a clanker-free zone. Okay, let me see if I can shade or fill the intersections just to kind of, again, make it really clear that this thing has a mouth. Doesn't need to be exact, but just fill it in roughly so that it's clear. Actually works out all right. Texture of this kind of like a more stony metallic texture as opposed to like a fleshy organic texture. thing kind of looks like a Bahamut from Berserk. Got freaky with the Langolier. You can quote me on that. Okay, so in case it wasn't clear, based on what I'm kind of roughing it around this thing, we're going for kind of more of an abstract deity design instead of something that's more kind of human or animalistic. I might have to scale it down again. I do not have a ton of space here. Diana says, this is an interesting monster design. I didn't expect it to go that way. I thought the ball was going to be the head. So here's what I'm kind of thinking, and I might need to rework this a little bit because I'm now working way outside of just where I started. I like the idea that this particular deity, again, it's not so much like a humanoid design. It's kind of like a big floating altar of sorts. And so this part here is... where's my pencil? This part here is kind of the central body, as it were, but this thing around it would be kind of like a big dais or altar that it kind of sits and floats around on. And the idea would be that this thing is just kind of like a disembodied large object that communicates, whether through like a psychic voice or maybe it has an actual voice that just comes out of the mouth. But I'm trying to think of a good design parallel. The thought in my mind from something that I know from recent media would be, I believe it's the persona Norn, or Demon Norn from SMT. Let me see if I can find it. I think that one was in 4. Yeah, okay. Here. Screen grab this and I'll paste it right in here. It'll also give me some ideas on maybe some things we can incorporate. Here, put it on a new layer right here. There we go. I'll scale it up a bit. It's going to be a little blurry, but this is kind of the idea that I'm going for here. It's like a big object type of a design. But I think I might need to play around with the shapes a little bit. I think I want it to be a little more circular. instead of kind of more oblong. It's going to be sharp for sure. Okay, this is kind of what I'm talking about. We want it to be like it's kind of set into a central thing, as opposed to, if we're looking at it from the side, being this thing that just sticks all the way out, the eyes like this. Instead, want it to be kind of more flat and round, almost like a would be a good parallel. The Norn design here is similar, although I think this thing is kind of more spherical. You're looking at it from the front. This one I want to be a kind of more flat. And so, because there's so much real estate, what I'm going to do is kind of work through and add kind of texture and then start putting in more detail. This is roughly the shape I want, but one, I don't care too much about it being symmetrical, and two, I definitely want it to look kind of sharp. But we need a general sort of bounding shape first, and then we can go and add more details around the different parts. And to kind of build on the idea again, dreams. And I don't know if I'm going to do every single one, but there'll definitely be more eyes. Diana says, why is the thingy around the God of Dreams jagged and sharp lore-wise? Give me the lore. Oh, good question. This is a good opportunity for us to kind of develop the lore, because before I started working on these on stream, I had a pretty rough idea, but I hadn't done like a deep dive into defining the lore because I wanted the concept designs first. But I like the kind of idea that for this thing, the sharpness of the overall shape kind of defines the fact that dreams and like a dream state in general can either be good or bad. It can either be like a pleasure state or a painful state. And so the sharp kind of edges and things that look like blades would represent the kind of negative or painful part of dreams. One thing we haven't really talked about, which I guess we might be able to kind of brainstorm while we're talking here, is the whole idea of color paletting too. What would this thing's base colors be? I'm thinking it would be kind of dark colors and maybe a mix of maybe more metallic or even organic type of tones. So things like dark blues, dark purples, maybe kind of like a dark metallic gray, blue, silver blue for this part around it. It wouldn't be gold like Norn here. It's just a reference from the SMT franchise. I do not envy whoever ends up having to draw this, because they're going to have to draw a lot of eyes. Did we just get through ads? Feel free to tell me when the ad breaks pop up, folks, so I know not to talk about anything significant until we get back. Likewise, if someone misses an explanation I do because the ads were playing, just let me know, and I'll be happy to repeat myself if the question got lost in the ad shuffle. I also think this thing would pair well with runic circles or glyphs. I'm not going to try and sketch them in here because if I was going to do that, there's an easier way than doing it by hand. But the idea that there'd be like glyphs here, 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 and here, kind of orbiting around the central body. So, and I imagine they'd be different. So maybe different aspects of like a magic type of energy all the way around is kind of like a additional effect. I think that would be a little bit different from the other ones. I do like runic patterns and glyphs on things. I think as long as you don't overdo it, they can kind of add to the overall theme and complexity of whatever it is they're decorating. Okay, I don't think we need this. Let's scale it down a bit. Yes, just a little. One idea I had for how this thing might interact with either mortals or whomever, since its whole kind of jurisdiction is dreams, right? When interacting with things in the waking world, then its main 5 eyes here that you see, here I'll cover in the irises just so it's a little more clear. So in the waking world, this thing is just interacting with either its fellow deities or what have you. Its main eyes are open like this. When it's interacting with things via dreams, whether it's like a premonition or a vision or whatever, and it's appearing in the world of dreams, these 5 main eyes would be closed, and all these other ones, I don't know if I'm just going to do 6, it's like 12, but these other ones all the way around would be open. Right now they're closed. And so the different sets of eyes aren't all open at the same time unless maybe there's kind of a significant reason. Does that mean we would have like render 2 different states? Probably not. But as far as the actual lore, when you see this thing, depending on what its eyes are doing, it'll tell you what state it's basically interacting in. Diana says he sees you when you're asleep and knows when you're awake. This thing is essentially biblically accurate Santa Claus, if you think about it. Oh, okay, I see. You were away for a bit. Okay, so did you hear me explain the jagged bits? Because I think we had like an ad break right around then. Diane, if you didn't before you had to go step away, then I can kind of explain what I talked through. That way you actually get an answer to your question. Oh, okay. No, you don't have to apologize. It's fine. I do not expect you folks on stream to just be glued to your device. I would just say don't feel bad about saying, hey, never got an answer to my question, because I won't know unless you tell me. So in a nutshell, what I said was the idea of this being kind of very sharp, almost weapon-like object that is representative of dreams, to me is kind of building off the idea that dreams can be either pleasant or painful. And, you know, this thing isn't designed to be a malevolent entity, it's just a god. But the idea that dreams can be sharp, painful, is why it looks like that. So that's a kind of real simple lore explanation for the overall shape. It's also kind of sun-like now that I look at it, which wasn't my intent. Definitely don't think of the sun when you think of dreams. And it says maybe the shape around it can change. I kind of like the idea that maybe this bit here that's around the central round part might rotate. Like we were talking about a little bit earlier, the idea that this thing has two basic states, kind of separate from the idea of this thing moving around. The states of waking state versus dream state. Waking state being 5 main eyes are open, dream state being those 5 eyes are closed, but all these other smaller ones all the way around the periphery, like this one, these 12 are open when this thing is traveling or communicating via dreams. And it could be that maybe while it's doing that, this whole outer piece is rotating around kind of like a hypnotic pattern. Okay. I don't want to spend too much time just adding in small little details, but I think the general shape of this one is pretty well defined. I kind of, like Diana was saying earlier on in the chat, I was not expecting this one to kind of end up this way, but I knew I wanted something in a similar vein. Phoenix Well says, when I have blues in some form because blue's supposed to be soothing. Oh yeah, I definitely think that would be a good mix of colors for the palette, because when you think of like dark, muted blues, you think of like Nightfall. And the idea that this thing would probably be reaching out while people are sleeping at night would be pretty like on theme, you know. I see. To pull from the Not All Dreams Are Bad. Maybe that's a good idea. Having the palette include more kind of neutral and soothing tones to contrast with the fact that it looks very dangerous. That would be an interesting way to see how shading and rendering in color can look, because you can go like the more organic, fleshy route in the way it's textured and then have that be the colors, or you can make it more kind of hard and metallic and still sharp, but in colors that aren't very hostile looking. Color theory for all these projects is going to be a whole different thing, but I do like that idea. It's a good suggestion. Okay, let's move you over. We'll do like a real quick side by side with its face, which might not necessarily need to be done, but we've done it for all the other ones, so we'll keep the formula. We've done like a side profile of the face, so we'll just do the central and around section. Doesn't need to be exact. But that should do. It's a little bit less important for this one because it's got kind of a big central shape and doesn't have like an actual face, like a humanoid face. I mentioned earlier when we were starting this one that I really would like to draft up concepts for like a more humanoid version of all the deities. Kind of like, again, more mortal form for when they descend to the mortal realm to walk around amongst people or whatnot. And I have no idea what this one would look like in kind of a humanoid form. But that'd be kind of an interesting idea to explore. Yeah, walking amongst the mortals, a la Zeus, or even just holding like council amongst each other, since having a giant floating multi-eyed orb thing might not be conducive to having a discussion amongst the divine council. It's good that you folks are here hanging out and helping me with ideas, because you might be able to give me some input on one that I'm been kind of struggling with coming up with some ideas for. We'll do that one next. to kind of set the stage for what I'm talking about while I finish up this part. There is a deity for chaos, and there are a lot of ways to approach chaos that we've seen in like a lot of media and literature. So that's the next one. And what we'll do is we'll do kind of like a quick step back through the ones that we've done up to this point. It's kind of like a recap for folks who might not have seen the previous ones from previous streams. Dinah says, if it's communicating with dreams, the first thing I thought was that it could have an antenna for broadcasting them. Yeah, here's kind of my idea for that, kind of along the lines of like a means of like transmittal, or how like you go from the god itself to communicating, right? And I don't know if you saw this earlier, so I'll just kind of explain here. In addition to like the central part that's being drawn in, I like the idea of it having like runic glyphs around it. Oh, that's not my pencil. So like a runic glyph circle here, here. This is what I sketched out earlier. Here and here. And those things serve as like a way for it to like send out its influence. And if it was animated, they'd be like kind of those glowing, rotating runic patterns you see on a lot of things where there's like a magical energy. And I think that'd be kind of an interesting effect to put on here. And so maybe I'll rough these in here like that. That way I don't forget in the future. Okay, and then the eyes are here. 3 and 3. Okay, let's save our work. I'm terrible at remembering to save my work. And let's do a recap of what we've done so far up to this point across all the different concepts. We'll go backwards. So this is, again, no names. That's a spoiler for the actual project. But this is the deity, god of dreams. And I'll distinguish which ones canonically are gods versus goddesses. Overall, I'm happy with this basic design. It's kind of a way to start off. It, again, a little bit unexpected. Took some twists and turns. But I think that'll definitely serve its purpose. I need to label these two. Okay, so this is dreams. All right, we'll go backwards. One we worked on earlier on stream today is the goddess of judgment. And again, anybody who remembers what we talked about with the previous Halloween project and the project from 2 years ago from Blood Moon Rites, this is the avian deity. And the avian deity is representative of judgment. Literal judgment, ethereal judgment, if you commit a transgression, you're answering to the bird. Dinah says, why Judgment Bird? When I wrote the original tracks for Blood Moon Rites, the whole idea was that the general deity featured in that one, which is where this project sort of evolved from, was some sort of bird. And then in the remixes, when I wrote lyrics for 2 of the songs, we actually had a lot more kind of thematic things fleshed out without getting its name. And the whole idea of like the cult and how they're trying to basically channel and subdue this deity they thought they could control. One of the major kind of conduits and themes from that project was this whole idea of the feathers. The crimson feathers of the avian deity are kind of like its catalyst. And so it's kind of a lot of things around a couple central ideas that was the focus of those 2 projects, the originals and then the remixes. And if you want to know what I'm talking about and you haven't heard the remixes, then I recommend checking out Coven Brand and Eternus Memoriam from that release, since those are the only 2 tracks with vocals, which were written by me. And if you haven't heard them before and you want to hear me doing backup vocals singing in the background, then that is another thing that's unique about those 2 from last year's Halloween project. But this was the character featured as like the main sort of focus of those 2 stories, and now this whole next Halloween project is pulling the focus out and dealing with everyone else. And so, yes, Bird of Judgment. I should label this one too. Okay. Moving further back, this is from the last stream we did. This is the God of Time. And it says this is a very early Halloween project. Yes. I want to get all of these concept sketches together so that I could figure out how I'm going to get art for it. And I could get that off and running while I work on focusing on the music. I've written a few of the tracks for this upcoming project, but I need to get a whole lot more. Like, I don't think I might only have 1 or 2 for the deities themselves. So I want to get the art out of the way on the front end so that I'm most likely going to commission a friend of mine. I need to go and ping them at some point, see if they're even interested. But the idea would be to get some fully fleshed out renders of these different deities to put into the video for the music project. And if I don't be proactive, because I've been pretty busy with work, then I'm going to be in September scrambling. And if it's anything like Lightbane Temple, when I have to do it myself, then I do not want to be under the gun for that, because that was a lot of work. Will there be stuff coming out between now and Halloween? Yes. Still working on another big project that's going to come out before. But this one, I want to get these ideas together. And so, for God of Time, went for kind of like this floating robed creature, and then I took a stab at creating kind of like an artifact or relic hourglass type thing. Kind of mechanical, but also a little organic. All right, make sure these are labeled. The next one. This is the Goddess of Destruction. I talked a little bit about this one when I was explaining this project at the beginning of the stream. But this one is kind of a take on kind of like a war goddess, but the whole idea of destruction isn't only war. It's anything that is going to be diametrically opposed to the concept of creation. And I kind of like the idea of all the different weapons. I mentioned that whoever I commissioned to do this is going to have to draw a bunch of weapons. But the mask for this particular deity is inspired by the Oni masks from Japanese folklore. It's kind of like almost like a mix of Japanese Oni mask and I think it's Balinese. kind of god or demon masks too. Next, this is the god of desire. The idea of material and immaterial wants, needs. So anything from material possessions, greed, lust, anything that has to do with desire is embodied by this particular deity. And so kind of the idea, it's a little bit tough to convey here, but I think one of the themes that would definitely go with this would be this idea of decadence. And so we probably see like a lot of gold and really gaudy colors. And I mentioned earlier on how there's a lot of imagery with the mouth. There's mouths, more mouths than you'd normally expect on a creature, which is kind of fitting for something representing desire. Next up, there's one I did not do on stream, but I think I talked about it a couple sessions ago. And this one is the goddess of fate. And taking some cues from both Eastern and kind of Western mythology with like the strings or chords of fate. You think of something like the fates from, I think it's Greek. Is it Greek mythology? This whole idea is kind of twofold in that the actual deity itself, this one required some explanation, so I'll kind of explain what I told the chat last time. The actual deity itself is not this object here, this sort of humanoid object. That is a statue or effigy. It's kind of like a big stone doll or mannequin of sorts. The actual deity is this kind of energy looking creature that's wrapped around it. And what we were talking about on the stream before when I was explaining this is the stone doll or idol itself is like a housing for the actual deity. That's where it kind of lives when it's not doing its thing. And when it either communes with mortals or its fellow gods, or it appears somewhere, it appears as this big statue, and kind of like a tether, the actual deity itself is kind of attached to it. And one thing we mentioned before as kind of like a theme, kind of like we did for the one with dreams, the arms of the statue move depending on what aspect of fate the deity is manipulating. So this might be its neutral state. If it has manipulated something that's going to change the course of fate in some way, then you'd be able to tell by when it appears the arms are in different positions. So like the arms might be up, this one might be up, this one might be straight out like a T-pose, this one might be down, it might be doing like a YMCA, but the actual stone effigy moves to reflect whatever the actual deity, the goddess of fate, is doing. And I might need to go back over this one to define it a little more, because it's a little bit rough compared to some of the other ones, but it's got kind of a unique concept. And so that's kind of a fun idea for something that is representing fate. And yeah, like I said, threads of fate. Okay, next up, maybe we will work on this one next. This one is also kind of rough. I started making these a little bit better defined as we went. This is like the second, I think, one we did. But this is the god of rebirth. And I think I'm going to redo this one, but I wanted to keep this one here to kind of show the ideas that we started with. This is actually something Bits and I have discussed, and I don't think I've ever told him that I was planning on incorporating that particular deity into my lore. So I'll have to mention that next time I talk to him. But this particular deity representing rebirth is kind of like this serpentine creature. And what I think I want to do differently is instead of it being several pieces that are joined together, I think I want to make its entire body kind of like an ethereal energy type thing, and then have it sort of housed in like a shell instead of it being separate sections that are connected. Then it says human centipede god. Not a human centipede, just a deific version of something that is shaped like a centipede. But I got some ideas on how I want to change it. So this is like version 0. I think I'm going to rework it a little bit. Oh, we got a couple more left. So this is and again, there's 10 deities in total. I think if we rework the rebirth one, there's only chaos left. Maybe we'll do that first. Maybe we can brainstorm some ideas for chaos, since that'll be ground up. This is the goddess of knowledge or wisdom. And so for this one, kind of taking the ideas of what you would think for like a scholarly type of character. Someone who would be kind of like an archivist, or working with like libraries or centers where knowledge is kind of built. That is this particular deity's sort of realm or jurisdiction. And so the ideas of like the scroll with all the eyes, a lot of eye imagery across these. And then I think we said, it's been a while, but I think we said the flame was be like the knowledge, flame of knowledge or inspiration, and then like a tome. So a lot of scholarly type of things that this deity sort of just carries around. And the last one, the very first design we did, probably like 3 streams ago now, the god of creation. So we talked about the idea of different forces being kind of diametrically opposed amongst this council of gods. So creation and destruction are definitely opposites. But this one is supposed to be kind of like a very naturalistic, like pagan type of looking deity. And it might be a little bit tough to tell because, again, it's very sketchy, but a lot of kind of like tree root and like vine type of things, that these tendrils you see, that's what they're supposed to be. And so very kind of like a nature-based creature. Dinah says, for the knowledge goddess, they have burn marks from back when they survived the burning down of the Library of Alexandria. Well, not entirely, since this particular setting for this story and all of these characters doesn't take place in our world. And so there might be parallels to an event like that, but they do not exist in a world of history and events that we know. It is a completely separate setting and environment for everything. Does it have a name? I have not given like the actual world a name, now that I think about it. There is a name that's kind of referencing this whole world of the gods and whatnot, and the deities themselves, but not the realm. I ask, are the 10 going to have opposite and have them colors with like opposition, like opposing colors for like the opposing concepts? Yeah, and here, let me kind of go back to the chart and explain a kind of core lore part of the project itself. Where are you? Where's my diagram? Oh, here we go. Okay, so this is kind of like lore breakdown for the project and story. We talked about this a couple streams ago, but I can kind of expound on it a little more. So these things here are not in any order, and I might have to kind of rearrange them a bit. I listed them out, and I actually forgot that I only had 9 initially. That's where chaos came from. But the whole idea of the story of the Halloween Project, the main plot, and it's not going to really be narrative focused. It's just I'm going to try and convey story through the songs themselves. We'll see how effective that ends up being. But there's a council of gods, council of deities, gods and goddesses, 10 of them. Atop the council is what we'll call the throne. That's what this weird looking thing at the top is. It's kind of like a cat head almost. This is the throne. Each god takes turns sitting atop the throne for a determined amount of time or age. And while that god or deity is sitting atop the throne, their influence kind of governs what happens to the mortal realm. After said amount of time passes, the throne's seat revolves to one of the other 10, and it rotates so that, let's say, creation sits upon the throne. It doesn't necessarily need to be someone that is opposing to it, just the next one in line follows a rotation. Yeah, it's a rotating wheel. Like, again, this is just a list. This isn't like an order. I just wrote them all out as I could think of them off the top of my head. But I would think that the rotation is determined by like a progression. So if destruction takes her turn atop the throne for a certain age, the next person to, or the next deity to ascend to the throne in rotation wouldn't be someone who is similar to destruction. So chaos wouldn't be a logical progression. It would probably be either creation or rebirth or knowledge or something that balances. And so all of the gods don't have direct opposites, but they're meant to be different concepts so that as the throne order revolves, there's a different sort of age that the mortal realm experiences. Might not be night and day every single time, but it should be different. And so that's the core concept of the deities themselves, and the story, quote unquote story of the release is talking about what happens when there is something that disrupts this natural progression of revolution, and that has to do with what happened in Blood Moon Rites. Diana says maybe the throne has some kind of awareness and chooses the deity it thinks next for balance or something. That's an interesting idea that I didn't think about. One thing that I was kind of considering as far as how the order is decided is that while someone is sitting on the throne, the rest of the council kind of meets to discuss who is going to be next, and they have to sort of plead their case or make their argument if they want to take the throne next. Like, let's say destruction is sitting atop the throne and chaos says, I think it should be me. It's going to be a probably one against everyone argument for why that makes sense. But everyone has to come into agreement by the time the end of destruction comes and the next person stands atop or sits atop the throne. That could definitely use some workshopping. I don't know if it'll be part of the kind of loose narrative or whatnot, but without getting into spoilers, there's something specific about what the story is focusing on instead of just here's kind of like your overview of how this works in this particular story. There's something specific that is driving what's going on. And if you remember the story from Blood Moon Rites, you can kind of guess what that might be, but I won't go into specifics. That way it won't be a spoiler. Dinah says, so the deities all want a somewhat balanced world for some reason. Maybe some more than others. I think the idea that some have a more innate desire for unbalance because that's their nature is part of it. But all of the gods and goddesses in play know that if things are destabilized, then it compromises everything, including them. So even if chaos is like, I want to burn everything down all the time because I detest order, if that were to happen, then it would compromise the deity's existence too. So it is in their best interest to want to preserve some semblance of balance, otherwise they might cease to exist. And so as you can tell, I've done a bit of thinking on kind of the specifics. This one probably has the most lore based around it, maybe separate from the RPG releases, since those did have a plot. But I think the concept is going to be interesting, the way it kind of fleshes out. I'm hoping you folks think so too when you get there. Okay. So maybe what we can do, we are getting close to time. I'm going to need to actually order some food for dinner soon before it gets too late. Maybe we can start simple primary for the God of Rebirth. Chaos, I think Chaos is going to be its own session. Now, if you folks find this interesting, I'd be 100% down for doing another brainstorming session for Chaos in the future. Might not be the next drawing stream, since I like to kind of jump between things, and we've done, I think, 3 or 4 in a row for just this project. But for Rebirth, again, like a long serpentine or worm-like body. I do like the idea that it's armored. What we could do is have armored sections that go over the whole thing. Because before it was like a bunch of separate sections that were all kind of floating. And I think it makes it a little bit hard to kind of see what the overall creature shape's supposed to be. Phoenix Wolf says, if the world isn't balanced in some way, the human realm falls apart. There's that, but another thing that I know Bits and I talked about when we did last year's Halloween project, in addition to that, and without like any sort of mortal realm to kind of support the gods, the deities, they kind of have no purpose. But we talked about how if the mortal realm is compromised, it makes them vulnerable to other outside forces that might seek to destroy everything. So like the gods are like a safeguard, and they oversee everything, kind of make sure things don't go completely sideways, but they're not the only influence on the mortal realm. Like one thing we talked about, I can't remember which project it was, but I mentioned like there might be a demon realm, you know, a plane that exists separate from the mortal realm but is pure destruction. And if the gods don't keep things balanced and protected, then it allows the demons in Avenue to be able to get in and potentially wreak havoc on everything. So kind of the idea of a power struggle amongst realms, not just between mortals and immortals, is something else that I wouldn't mind exploring in a different project, since the whole kind of universe and setting's got a lot of potential to do some interesting things. Phoenix Wolf says, what if the humans unknowingly let in created something that would harm the gods and put them in danger? Oh yeah, that is sort of the plot of Blood Moon Rites. The whole idea that mortals, and it's not necessarily humans, because the defined mortal realm of this particular setting isn't just people. It's just mortal beings, things that are not ethereal or immortal in nature. So not necessarily humans. But the whole kind of main plot line of Blood Moon Rites was the Wingless, the cult. They were attempting to subdue one of the deities, and one of the reasons why you don't want to do that, in addition to it being very disrespectful, is by destabilizing forces that are meant to keep things in order, you could be allowing something else through, or a weak point that would allow something else through at a later date. That is not something that was explored in the project, but the idea that the deities were wise to what happened and are pretty upset and exacted swift judgment upon that cult was not just because they were upset that they were being messed with, but also that this group of foolish mortals could have done much more damage to everything by messing around with the stuff they were messing around with. So that very well might inform where the next Halloween projects kind of leads. Haven't quite decided that yet, but you never know. The universe is, like I said, got a lot of potential for interesting stories to tell, and I would like to kind of experiment around with it some more. That's why we're focusing on it for the next Halloween project. Okay, got an idea. The inner body is going to be kind of made of energy. So now, instead of it being kind of a bunch of floating sections that are all connected, it's kind of like I mentioned before, with a shell protecting this like energy-based body of this serpentine creature. I like that better. I think it works a little bit kind of more cleanly. We can have the armor going further down. right away, I think this design is a little bit easier to kind of parse out. So keep kind of refining all of the details before we get ready to wrap up for today. I think you could probably do some cool effects by messing around with like glowing or transparency effects on the body to make it look like it's made of energy. And we'll label this one. This is Rebirth 2.0. What I can do is work on the head sketch later. I don't need to do that right now. It's most likely just going to be this. Probably not a whole lot different. Some energy coming off the horn just cause. All right, let's go ahead and save this. Could have worked at a little bit larger scale, I guess. That's all right. save that. Yeah, right away, I like this particular design a lot more than the original. We compare, this one's a lot larger. It's just a little more chaotic, and I don't think it kind of has much cohesion to it. I'll label this one. So for now, we'll see what we can do with this. Maybe I'll refine it a little more. I think that will do. That just leaves chaos. That will be a future session. That will be an interesting challenge to tackle. And maybe we can experiment around with human forms of the deities. I don't know if we're going to do official art for it, but that'll be something for if I have extra time. So we'll just have to see how that all works out in the future. But let me see who is online that we can raid and get ready to wrap up for today. Let's see. Oh, Micro's online. I've not seen her online at the same time in quite a while. Limbus Company. All right, we can go head over and say what's up to Micro. So let me go ahead and mute the audio, and we'll go to outro. And we will call that a stream for today. We will be back tomorrow in the afternoon. And we'll be picking up with Look Outside. So hopefully I can figure out what I'm supposed to do. But if you want to see some more kind of cosmic Lovecraftian horror in the world of Look Outside, then you definitely want to stop by. That game's a trip. But in the meantime, thanks to everyone who came and hung out. It was great chatting with you folks, and you gave me some good ideas. More to come on the project in the future. So until then, hope everyone has a good rest of your day, morning, day, or evening. And I will catch you in the next one. Now let's go see how the Limbus Company is going on MicroStream.